Hello YouTube. I know it's been a little while since I posted a video, but I really haven't had much to do for maintenance until recently. My Harley Davidson recently hit 10,000 miles, so I'm starting to do the 10,000 mile service on it. And one of the things that you have to do for the 10,000 mile service is an oil change. And then you also have to change the primary fluid change. So to start off, let's discuss some of the items that you are going to need. According to the book, it says that you should have the vehicle on a jiffy stand. I think that the kickstand is just fine. I've never had any issues changing oil on the kickstand, just that once you start draining the oil, throw your leg over, stand it straight up so it gets a good complete drain. Also, before you change the oil, make sure that you fired it up and run it to operating temperature. That way it heats up the oil and gets it to the appropriate running viscosity. Items that you're going to need. Well, first off, you're going to need oil. Minimum fill on this is 3 quarts according to the book. I always grab 4 quarts just in case, and you're going to need 20 W50. Again, 20 and 50, these are the ratings for the viscosity. W stands for winter, so in the colder weather the viscosity is a 20, and then at operating temperature it becomes a 50, and that's what you're going to need. Now, according to the book, it also says use only official Harley Davidson products. Well, of course it's going to say that they want the extra money to put that little Harley Davidson label on it. As long as you're using the same company, either a synthetic or other, with each oil change, and you're not actually mixing the oils themselves, because what makes oils differ from brand to brand is the types of detergents or chemicals in it. So some of them have anti-corrosions, others have super lubricants in it, and those chemicals don't always mix, which can cause certain seals and other things to break down inside of your engine. You don't want that. Other thing that you're going to need, you'll need a good sized funnel to make it easier. Of course, you don't need the funnel if you're good at pouring oil, but it helps to prevent keeping a mess. Now, I use a 6-quart cooking pan that has been taken out of service from my kitchen, purely because I'm too cheap to buy a low profile oil pan. My regular oil pan, my 10-quart, does not fit underneath my motorcycle without a jiffy stand, and I don't want to spend the money on the jiffy stand and a different oil, so I just use this small 6-quart, which is more than adequate to catch all the oil that's going to be dumped out of that. You're going to need yourself a socket wrench, an extension. If you're using a K&N filter, you're going to need a 17mm socket, because that's going to fit on the top of your K&N filter. If you're using any other type of filter, if it's from Harley Davidson, you're either going to need a band wrench that'll have to go in between the front supports or the front frame of the vehicle to take it off, or you're going to need an oil filter socket from Harley Davidson for the appropriate size. I do not own one of those, purely because I don't want to spend 20 or 30 bucks for a single oil filter tool when I can just upgrade to a K&N and always use a 17mm socket. Just makes life easier. Lastly, you're going to need a 5/8 socket, which is going to help you pull out the oil drain plug underneath the vehicle. So now we'll discuss the various portions of the vehicle in which case you're going to start working on when you're doing your oil change. Your first part that you need to know is where your oil fill is, and that's going to be right here. It's going to be off of the right hand side of the motorcycle in front of the battery box, and it's a simple twist off. And what you want to do is you want to open this up first so that you don't create a suction when you start draining the oil. So you open that up, take the cap off, you can set it off to the side, and obviously you can see that this is where the oil is, because that's where your dipstick marker is for where your fuel fill, add, hot, cold, for testing, for all those things. So you want to take that out. We'll just set that off to the side for now. You want to make sure that you don't get that dirty. Then we're going to start sliding up underneath and getting a look-see at our oil plug. Now, the oil plug faces towards the front of the motorcycle, and this is our oil plug right here. And that, again, the front of the motorcycle, you can see the front tire is all right there. So what we got, that's going to be a 5/8 socket that goes right on to the oil plug. You put your throw your wrench on top. Now remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty. Got to break it free. Once we got it broke free, you can hand tight to help get it out. I just like to use my hand once I have it broke free, because I think it's easier than trying to work in tight areas. I back it out just enough so it's not leaking, and I don't want to move my things out of the way. Grab my little 6-quart saucepan, move that underneath, and you can see that fits rather nicely under there. And then just continue twisting until you got oil. Now you're going to let that drain out completely. Now these plugs have a magnet on the end of them, and you can see right up here is a magnet. That's going to help you collect, or help the motorcycle clean up any type of small metal fibers. So you're going to need a rag and wipe that magnet down real clean. So I'm going to pause the video one moment just so I can wipe this down, because I need both hands. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. You can see I wiped off the oil drain plug. Our next thing we want to inspect is the seal that's around there. A good practice is just to buy the rubber grommet and replace it. So you just throw a new rubber seal on the end of that. Some people will say you have to replace this plug. I don't see why, but I always use the plug as long as the threads themselves and the magnet itself isn't all gunked up. And if my seal is good, then I'm going to be good to go. So I set my drain plug off to the side with some of my other parts. I'll lean back underneath and take a look. And we can see we're still draining. And since I don't have this on a jiffy stand, I'm going to throw my leg over this and stand it straight up and down to get a more complete drain. The other thing I like to do to get a more complete drain is I take a little bit of the oil and I dump it in to help wash out some of the older oil. So if I throw my leg up over top of this, and we're just going to stand it up for a minute. And once I have it good, stand up for maybe 10-15 seconds. Let it drain the rest of the way out. And bring it back down. Open up another quart of oil. Take my funnel, insert my funnel. I'm not going to use much, I'm just going to pour a little bit in there. Just to help cycle out some of the older stuff. As I climb down here, you can see how it went from black to a nice light tan. So that's more fresh oil that's starting to come out from where that is. So I'm going to let that sit and drip dry for a little bit. And I'm going to change over to my other tools. I'm going to take off my 5/8 socket. I'm going to grab my 17mm, my extension. The 17mm and extension, attach them to the wrench. I'm also going to grab my fresh K&N filter and the quart of oil that I was working with. We're going to move along to the other side. And you can see right in here between your various shifters we have the filter, and it's recessed back quite a bit, so that's why you need your extension. Now if you get the K&N filter again, you can throw the wrench right onto it, and you can use the K&N filter to twist it off. Left or loose. Now, one thing I did want to show you is right here. This is your crank sensor, so you got to be careful not to pop that with any type of tools that you're working with when you're doing that. If you're using the strap filter that I showed you earlier in the video, with that you have to come through these bars and around and then twist it off. But that's why I like to use the K&N. Makes things simple, easy. Get your filter, get your socket on there, and then you just got to crank it off. So lefty loosey, righty tighty. I'm going to break it free and start cranking it off. And don't be alarmed if a little bit of oil comes out. That's natural. There's obviously residual oil that's going to be inside the filter itself. Now you twist off your filter. Pull it out, set it up to the side. We'll get your fresh filter out, and what you want to do is you want to take a look up and in where your filter that you just took off. You want to double check around the seal. You want to double check around the seal right here. Make sure that the rubber seal didn't come off of the old filter, and double check your threads right around here to make sure none of your threads are messed up. Okay, if you don't see any damage to or any seal, or if there's some seal or any type of goo that's on there, you're going to have to scrape it off with a razor blade. You can see that that one came off clean. So now we move on to the fresh filter. Just peel off the top. I'm going to grab a little bit of oil. Pre-charge my filter a little bit. And with some of the oil that's in here, I'm just going to take my finger around, roll it around the seal here. Now when you're installing the filter, you don't want to use any tools in installing it. You just want to use your hand and do it hand tight. If you put tools on this while you're installing, what's going to happen is you're going to get it torqued so tight that when it starts to heat, because heat causes expansion and cooling causes things to contract, the expansion and contraction of this filter is going to be so tight that you're never going to be able to get it off. And that's how you get your filter on. Once you got your filter on, there's my hands are oily. I gotta try to wipe them off a little bit. I'm going to use this rag to make sure that I get a good hand tight on that filter. And then clean as you go. I want to wipe off the oil that I spilled. That filter is on there pretty tight. Alright, I'll throw a rag down on top of my spill, and we're going to move back to underneath the vehicle. I'll get my drain plug, my socket. I'll move my makeshift oil catch pan out of the way. We're going to reinstall a socket. Now, again, same place that it came out, where it's going back in. And put that back in there. Twist it on. Hand tight. Fit my socket. Put my socket over top of the nut, the drain plug. This time I'm looking to torque it down. Now, of course, you don't want it Gorilla tight. You just want it torqued down. So at this point, I'm maybe 1/8 of a turn. So Notice I'm not grabbing down where on the wrench where I'm going to have a whole lot of torque. I'm up towards the head where it's going to limit the amount of torque. I feel it seat. It's not turning anymore. I'm not trying to force it. I'm done. That drain plug is in. Now it becomes the point where we're going to start filling the oil. So when you're ready to fill the oil, right according to the manufacturer, off the bat you want to start off with 3 quarts. Now, we'll just start off with our 3 quarts. I'll wait for the oil to get completely out of the funnel. Once the oil is out of the funnel, then we'll start replacing the oil filler cap and the dipstick. So you want to wait maybe a minute or 2 just to make sure that the oil gets down to the base of the pan and settled. But our next step is to take our oil filler cap and screw in. So, and you can see your different, your add, your fill hot on Jiffy stand, or fill hot vehicle upright. And you can see the 2 different sides. So we'll screw in. Take a stab. Let's have a look-see at what we're doing, or where we're at. Right now, it looks like we are full. So full hot Jiffy stand. We are right where we're supposed to be at that edge, because that's where it's sitting at. And that is how you do an oil change on a 2014 Harley Davidson Ultra Limited. Check back once I get some primary drive fluid. I'll show you how to change the primary also. So then the only other part of doing your 10,000 mile checks is double checking all of your bolts, double checking your brakes, and it's just basically a check in the block. And then once you get done, make sure you open up your owner's manual to the back. It says your service interval, that you did your own service, write down the mileage, date, time, and the fluids that you use. That way they can't argue should your vehicle still be under warranty.